And welcome back to the final segment of Your Local Government. Our guest is John Callahan, Senior Director of Government Affairs for Pennsylvania School Board Association. And John, thank you again for being with us. We've covered a lot of ground, and we're going to just keep going with some light topics as we continue with property tax reform. Clearly, nothing irritates people more sometimes than their school taxes, because it is somewhat of an archaic way of, that goes way back. And we spoke earlier about kicking the can down the road. I mean, as long as I can remember, we've been talking about property tax reform, and all these proposals are given and nothing ever happens. And, many seniors are struggling to stay in their home. And clearly everyone agrees it's inequitable, but nobody can agree what to do. So tell us your perspective on what's out there on the Hill, and any thoughts as to what might actually float to the top and when.
Boy, we have covered every topic, and now we're on to the one that really hits home.
Yes.
Property tax. Nobody likes them. Nobody likes it, and it's a tax that's been there, and we've debated this. As far as I've been around in the Hill, that's 20 years or so, and it never seems to go away. And one of the bigger things on the, when you're debating it, and what comes down to it is, property tax. If you're going to go away from property tax, you still have to fund your public education system. Well, what are you going to replace it with? And so the solutions there is, okay, well, we got PIT, so that's, you and me pay, you and I pay that, as well as small businesses. So then we have some problems there for, do we want to increase the PIT? Okay, it's the lowest in the nation, but one of the lowest, is ranked 5.
In case someone who doesn't know what that stands for.
Personal income tax, my apologies. But so, okay, we got that idea. We also have a sales tax out there. All right, so sales tax, in order to raise the amount of money that you would need, what do you have to do? You have to broaden it. So that means, clothing, water, and diapers, and flags, and whatever else need to get taxed. Or you have to increase the rate, so 6 to 7 to 8. And many of the viewers may not know that down in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, they actually have an increased tax on the sales tax already as well. So you have the property tax challenges with just that. And then you have other and sundry taxes that you could put it on. Marcellus Shale, maybe you tax more there. Maybe you change the whole thing and go to a VAT tax. I mean, value-added tax. So that kind of myriad of choices is what the problem is. So when we look at it as school boards and a school board association, you look at the property tax and you see that's a very stable tax. But then you could look at the personal income tax, and I didn't even mention the corporate net income tax, which is pretty high. And you look at those and say, well, are they reliable? Do they provide a consistent stream to fund the education system?
Because recessions come and go.
Potentially not. And the same thing with the sales tax. That kind of goes up and down. So you have a lot of challenges in the other tax. And so the proposals that you've seen over the years, either pick one or expand one or do whatever. Even the governor has his proposal out there. And it all comes down to what one you want to live with. And in many cases, we haven't had the votes or kind of the will to see it change to those other taxes. The other problem that we would push out there and say is that when it comes to running a school district, people believe that a school district can maintain the same cost projections just standing in with the cost of living, 1% every year, seeing that rise. But there are a lot of mandates that are on school districts. There's a lot of pressures, like the pension system that we talked about, that don't follow a simple cost of living increase. They follow a 10% increase. So then all of a sudden your cost of your education just went up by 10%. Or a mandate, I love special education, but that's one of the bigger areas where your budget is blowing up in school districts, because you have to have an aide with each kid, and you have different expenses. And those things cost and they grow faster than cost of living. So to that point, school districts' costs increase because of all these mandates and outside pressures, and you kind of have to live with that. And so it's a constant stress between the cost of the education and how much property tax and how much you get from the state. So this is not an easy problem. I've probably spent too much time on it already, and we could talk for hours on it.
Sure.
It's not an easy problem, nor does it have an easy solution. And that's why we've never really had something that kind of floated or congealed to the top.
Any bills that are now being seriously considered, or will this just get kicked down the road for another session?
There are bills that have been seriously considered in the Senate, and I forget the new version of Senate Bill 76. There's a new number behind it. That's last session's version of it, and that was a sales tax flip. And the governor's proposal, and Dave Reed, the majority leader in the House, has a proposal as well. But at this stage, it's all kind of in the mix.
Sure. Well, keep us up to speed on that.
Will do.
Final subject, Common Core. People may have heard that name, but first help us understand what it means, and then what are some of the pros and cons and your position on it?
The concept on the national level was to kind of have set standards across the nation that would be able to prepare children for the workplace of the future. And to that point, and there's a lot of kind of rumors and conspiracy around that, and sometimes, but at the end of the day, Pennsylvania has their Pennsylvania Core, which is standards that Pennsylvania adopted from the Common Core and also from their own kind of work group. And with those standards, they're put on the school to meet those standards, and there are testing out of that. There's keystones and different tests that kind of test if you met those standards. And even right now, this is a hot item right now because we've kind of put a pause on how we test people and taking an evaluation of that right now in the state. And the governor just announced that a few days ago. So you're going to find that this testing subject, the Pennsylvania Core and kind of the curriculum is still, it's always on the education person's lips. But I'll tell you what, right now we're living with it. Schools are meeting the curriculum and they're kind of dealing with it. And what does that mean? You have to buy different curriculum. You have to kind of teach your teachers how to teach different skills. And even we've witnessed some of the skills are moving from 6th grade. There's a good example of like algebra skills moving from 6th grade to 5th grade. So things are getting more rigorous as well. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? I'll leave it up to the viewer at this stage.
Sure.
But from our view, we're meeting the law, and that's the job of the association, is to encourage our members. The law is the law. We're going to try to meet it.
Sure. And there's many discussions on teaching to the test and how does that really implicate for an education that is good for the student versus one that passed tests. And I guess we'll be discussing that for a while.
We could go on for hours with that, and there's lots of curriculum on that. I'd say for us, when it comes to graduation exams, graduation requirements that you pass an exam, we as an association are opposed to that. Don't have a problem with assessment. Everybody needs to be assessed once in a while. But when you attach it to graduation requirement, lots of problems happen.
Sure. We have about 30 seconds left. That's not a lot of time, but what are some of the major changes we're going to see in education in a nutshell?
That's a trick question. Education is always evolving. We're always going to have our curriculum discussion. We're always going to have those standards of discussion. We need pension reform. We need to figure out how to fund it. But these are going to be, there's always going to be challenges.
There is.
It's going to keep me employed for a long time.
We'd like to have you back sometime.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to do it. Thank you for being with us, John, and quite an educational program. And that's going to do it for this program. Join us again next time to learn about your local government.